Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our panel. And if you have just joined us, we are delighted to have with us indeed an expert in the field, Dr. Ja'far Sheikh Idris, along with my colleague and fellow and friend, Sheikh Yusuf Idris.
We were talking about the second phase, let's say, and the challenges that you faced in the da'wah when you were about 18 years old at the time. And we said that the biggest challenge, let's say, that you faced at that time was the challenge of communism trying to take over, and how you overcame that.
Yes, not all people of my age, of course, but only the people who went to high school. Not all people. Perhaps others who had some kind of education, because at that time, communism was rather popular in all the Arab world, perhaps the Muslim world. And the real challenge of communism was in the 50s, the time when Stalin was, what do you call him, chairman or president. And as I said previously, the challenge was intellectual and moral. Of course, I understood later on that Marx himself used to say that Marxism has nothing to do with morality. It is something scientific. But what he said is different from what really attracted people. What really attracted people to socialism was something moral, because people wanted justice. And so we had to read about these matters, and the books that helped us greatly in this, because it was, as I said, general challenge. One of the people who were interested in this, good writer, and wrote about this, was Sayyid Qutb. We read his famous book, Al-Adala al-Ijtima'iyya, Social Justice in Islam. And he wrote another small pamphlet called the Battle of Islam and Capitalism, because Muslims wanted to say that when they reject communism, that doesn't mean that they accept capitalism, and intellectuals like Sayyid Qutb. So that was the real challenge. And as I said, we started to read books even by communists. I remember I started reading Das Kapital when I went to the university. It's a big book. I never finished it. But I had an idea about the book, and I read some other book by Marx. When I went to the university, I studied philosophy.
Before we go to the university phase, I would like to ask you about one of the issues that I think young people today face, and that is how to strike a balance between their knowledge of Islam and their knowledge of current affairs. Like you said that you were reading books by Islamic scholars and so on and so forth, and at the same time you're reading pure books that talk about communism. So how could young people these days?
Yes, many people ask this question, and I remember Brother Zarabuzu used to tell, when I visited them there, he used to give me as an example when I said this. He used to tell young people that you must do this, because if you immerse yourself just in books that are against Islam, and you are very young, you are not very equipped with Islamic knowledge, you are bound to be affected by these books. Especially, some of these books are written by great minds. They are not Muslims, but they are intellectuals. And it is not enough even for equipping yourself just to read the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But you need help from scholars to show you how to get the relevant knowledge from the Quran and the Sunnah, because no young person who is just beginning can go directly to the Quran and the Sunnah and find all the relevant answers to the challenges that they face. Of course, he will benefit greatly from reading the Quran and the Sunnah, but that is not enough. The scholar who benefited me greatly in this respect was Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah. Many people now, when they hear me criticizing some philosophers or so, think that I got this from my study of philosophy. But in fact, I got it from Sheikh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, not from. Because he studied philosophy since he was young. And all Western philosophy, including Marxism, has its origin in Greek philosophy. So if you understand Greek philosophy well, and you understand our scholars' replies to them, then that will help you.
Sheikh, I think comparing the two challenges that you have spoken about so far, the first challenge, the motive behind it was mostly passion of the layman that you spoke about and the innovations that you mentioned. And the second challenge was more of an intellectual challenge. And I think knowing you, I think you took more joy, or I would assume that you have taken more joy in refuting the second challenge than you did the first one.
Because I spent only a few years in this first one. And there was no challenge, because there was no, in fact, no intellectual challenge. Because we knew, as I said, that these people deviated from the Quran and the Sunnah. There was no real argument with them. We just tell them that this is against this hadith, this is against this verse, because there is something common between you and them. There is something to which you both refer. But when someone comes and says, I don't believe in God, even in the existence of the Creator, then the challenge becomes greater.
And wasn't this something very novel to a place like the Sudan, for example, where the people are really believers?
Yes, it's not only in the Sudan, but I had a chance to go to Egypt, and I studied there just for a few months. I found at that time the Egyptian students were better than the Sudanese because communism did not affect them very much. I don't know why, but because the Sudan was under the British rule, and we used to study in English. And these books, pamphlets, and so on, the influential ones, were translations, either from German or English or Russian or so. The most influential ones were pamphlets written by Stalin himself. But he was not an intellectual. He was not an intellectual. So he simplified things and made them very appealing to young people. They don't want to go into intricate arguments and so on. So he says, it is so and so and so and so and so.
And people like simple answers.
Yes,
they don't like to analyze.
No. So we read some of his books. One of their influential books, and very simple also, was written by Marx and I think Engels also. And that is called the Communist Manifesto. They call it in Arabic Al-Bayan Al-Shiu'i. A very small pamphlet. So we read that. So that was a real challenge. And alhamdulillah, I think, yes.
So I think that this is a very interesting point. Do you think that writing these small pamphlets and so on and so forth, when it comes to Islam, would also have a great effect, maybe like it did with the example that you gave about communism?
Yes, there were. At that time, there were. And we read those books. As I said, this challenge was general, almost all the Muslim world. So some of Maududi's pamphlets were a response to this. I don't know whether Sheikh Hassan al-Banna's pamphlets, I don't remember now whether they were a response to this or not, but he used to be interested more in general things like democracy, what is the Islamic system, and so on. But the person who was really interested and wrote and knew the danger of communism was Sayyid Qutb.
If you could tell us, in your opinion, what was the best way to encounter this, this communist movement or so?
I think, of course, that one of the best ways was this, that you meet the challenge with the Islamic challenge. But I learned from our
Interaction
with the communists that Muslims generally did not do the da'wah. And it's something that if we did, would have lessened, I think, the challenge of communism. And that is to defend the poor people.
Mm-hmm.
There is much, and I was surprised because we were interested in socialism. When I read the Quran and I find verses like, مَا سَلَكَكُمْ فِي سَقَرٍ, what was it that put you in hellfire? And they say, لَمْ نَكُ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ. We did not
feed the poor and
feed
the
the poor. لَمْ نَكُ نُطْعِمُ الْمِسْكِينَ.
لم نكن من المصلين.
لم نكن من المصلين ولم نكن نطعم المسكين. So he put salah with feeding the poor. And there are many other verses like this. And I think that this is still a problem. People don't talk much about this problem of poverty.
I think this is one of the subjects that actually appeal very much to our brother Sheikh Yasser, and he tries to talk about it in his khutbahs and so on and so forth. And he gave very beautiful points in a previous episode of the same program. Jazakumullah khairan for being with us in this panel. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Yasser, for being with us. Jazakumullah khair, our viewers, and we hope to see you again in another episode of your program, Experts Panel. Until then, I leave you with the peace and the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.